I was thinking about this and why I wanted to do it, and I feel like poetry is something that does not come easy to me. There's other things like working out, physically working out, which I try to do regularly. I that's hard for me also.
Where to begin? I think you're right about the idea. The comparison with exercise is pretty apt. Um, and I've been writing poetry for about 12 years now, something like that, and I do it
Yeah.
weekly, not every day, but at least once or twice a week, and it feels kind of like exercising actually. Doesn't always result in anything that leaves my notebook, but the act and process of making it feels like the most important part. So the poems in this book are mostly from 2011, 12, 13. Those are the period that I took this material from. And it's long enough ago now that I kind of see it as an outsider or a stranger somewhat myself to those works. So I guess I feel a certain amount of tension between the making of these things and the curating of them, the showing them, the publishing them. Uh,
Yeah.
I still feel very much like I don't know what I'm doing in that department when I realized that a lot of the factors of our world and our daily life conspire to prevent having the time to make stuff, and so I felt like I had to fight for it a lot more, and it became a lot more uh, sort of sacred and private, not in the
Yeah.
sense that the content is private, but just that the activity of making felt like my way of being in touch with myself.
I've had to cultivate, I think, within me a certain thick skin, um,
Yeah.
determination to share these things to the world because, you know, I have this here, like
Hmm.
in front of me, and this is a physical object that, in some sense, I think has a life of its own,
Yeah, right.
because you've, in a sense, in some way, given birth to this.
Hmm.
And though it's very personal, there's universal things in here. So I've been meditating on a brief history of devotion,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
and there's certain lines that I underlined, like the roast beef drifted.
Hmm. Yeah.
You can't feed the dead,
Uh-huh.
simultaneous in their blink.
Hmm.
We've been shorn for the occasion and will surely rise now. Like those are really puzzling, Alec. Those are puzzling and stirring and strange.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize until you started, picking these moments out, kind of how visual they are, or how much they engage with some of the real elements of visual composition.
Yeah.
Uh, uh-huh. In the moment, I can tell you this much: like this is a poem I wrote, all in one day in 2011, and in the moment of writing something like this, I'm not trying to code anything. I mean, it feels very much like that's just the clearest, most direct way to say what's being imagined. Okay.
And I feel like, as when I read your poems, and I love this about them, and when I say exercise, there's a puzzlement.
Hmm.
It's stirring me, but it's not clear what.
Hmm.
And so there's a certain amount of work that it's causing in my brain, and it's not just my brain because it's my spirit as well.
Uh, and mystery is definitely important. I mean, mystery for me is related to curiosity, and curiosity
Yeah.
is a way forward. So when I write, I mean, I write to have the experience, not to uh, communicate a pre-digested experience, if that makes any sense. And that makes me kind of that creates some challenges for me as an artist to be, a sort of working artist because my production sequence is somewhat of an element of faith. It's not that I can just sort of through sheer will and determination, force a draft out onto the page and then work with it until it's what I want. I really feel like it's a way of life, and I just have to sort of, it's like exercise. I show up to do it a lot, and the artifacts or the things that get left behind that are, some of them are worth saving to me, and then a smaller subset of those are worth not only saving but showing to other people or trying to show to other people. And so it's really as much a matter of like selection for me as it is about editing, because most of what I publish, all of the poems in this volume included, are 90% there in the first creation phase. I do some cleaning and I do some adjustments for lineation. Maybe I'll change a word, maybe I'll change a title, but pretty much it's like a conjuring. So a cult kind of makes sense to me too. In the mail, eager for the opportunity to read. Okay. So if anybody's interested in hosting poets, I'd love to hear from them too.
There is that Jesus saying about the last shall be first and first shall be last, and I think a lot of things in our culture are flipped upside down. Things that seem, they present themselves as important,
right?
But they're not. Like, it's important to have a very nice car to impress the people, and things that seem unimportant actually are very important. And I think poetry is one of those things that seems like it's, if there was a pyramid, like the food pyramid they used to publish,
Right. Okay. I like it.
I think, poetry should be in a really important part of that nutritional base, because it is exercising these muscles of listening to the quiet, the hushed whisper of the intuition, intuitive, the place where important things of the unconscious are bubbling up. And I think on one hand it's personal, but on the other hand, I think it's tremendously publicly impactful. It's like people hate poetry, but it's like the most fucking important thing. And it seems a little counterintuitive but I still believe in that.
I think I do too. I mean, I think so. It's important, but it's ironic because it's one of those spaces that can't be, for me anyway, it can't be freighted with that sense of importance or that expectation of importance to emerge. I'll chase it into hiding. So it's important after the fact. It's important because it managed to emerge despite all of those pressures to be what the world wanted it to be. And all of the things that are kind of inscrutable or hard about poetry are the places where it's bucking against some kind of normative pressure. The way it should sound, or the way a word should mean, the way a speaker ought to present themselves, and so that's why it's work. And I guess that's why it's useful, or why it's important, because if anybody wants to engage it, they have to slow down and they have to do some listening and some seeking, and that's that's something we're unaccustomed to doing, and I guess it's important just by example, even if people can't penetrate it or engage with it, just because it reminds us that we don't have access to everything easily. I mean, but that's true for visual arts too. So I think that's common for painters as well. That people look at paintings probably and say, what the fuck, and that's a useful moment. Even if they don't end up getting an answer that they're satisfied with.
And maybe the renegade and the rebel in me makes me that much more interested in it, because it's something that I think a lot of people pass by, and I don't want to pass it by, because I think it's important.
The struggle the tension is really what makes poetry continuously vital, and so it'll never be fully embraced, but it's never going to go away either. I mean, you can't just stamp poetry out. So it's just gonna, it's like an elemental force, it's just gonna move around and show up where it's necessary.
Yeah, I agree. And I use that as metaphors are always flawed, but I guess what I was trying to build was some kind of a metaphor for power and value that's hidden. I mean, another way of saying it would be and I love the Grimm's fairy tales, where the little girl is forced to go out into the winter and pick fresh strawberries for her cruel stepmother. Mm-hmm. And she just has a little bit of bread, and she's ill-suited for the cold, and she meets an old woman, and she gives up her cloak. And she gives up her bread. And she doesn't know that this old woman is actually not an old woman. She's like the sprite of the whole forest. She opens up this place where suddenly it's springtime, and there's all this whole meadow of strawberries, and she picks all the strawberries and she brings them home. It's like true value oftentimes is hidden, and I'm not sure why. I don't know. And it's sometimes the things that are in plain sight, or the things that we're all, we're trying to be friends with a handsome quarterback and the the queen of the pom-pom squad, but it's that pimply kid who's got the real insights, or the fat girl in the back of study hall who's, she's the one who found the mystical portal.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but you know what? But it's oneself too, right? That's why I have continued to make certain sacrifices for poetry and carve out space for it in my life, is because it's incredibly sustaining, and it's a renewable resource. Like, I think to answer your question about why we were so diverted all the time is because power would like us to believe that satisfaction is external somewhere. It's in another person. It's in another, item, product, whatever, a career. And there is something imminently gratifying about making. And when you engage with that process, whether it's visual art, whether it's poetry, whether it's music, I think, there's something really calming. I mean, it tranquilizes a lot of those anxieties about status, about money, about achievement, and it's fleeting. It only really exists, in that studio space, or in that particular mindset of making, and then maybe reflecting on the things that you have made. But that's really powerful, and that's really disruptive to a capitalist system.
Again, I want to share you, and I think that who you are and what you're doing is important. And yes,
well,
truthfully.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
You're welcome. So I am gonna wrap it up, because if it goes longer, then I'll have to spend more time editing. And
absolutely,
I think we've collaborated on this and that. I did the cover and submitted that to your designer, but it'd be interesting to see what other kind of corners we could turn together. Sound good?
Yeah, I'm always, I am perpetually in the mood to make stuff. So if others are around who want to make stuff with me, I think that's, I'm excited. That's fun. I love to play.